Ignition sequence starts. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey everybody, this is the Digital Asset Investor, and today I'm going to do something that I don't think the state of Georgia wants me to do. I'm going to take my sons to hit baseballs. The one thing that I have done during this, I've stayed on lockdown just like everybody else, and I think the rule is basically they want us to go to the grocery store or the pharmacy, and other than that, stay at home. But there's one thing, when the history books are written, that's going to be 1,000% fact, and that is that the digital asset investor did not stop throwing baseballs to his sons during this current event that we are in. I found an outside cage. There's nobody ever there during this thing, and so I take my sons 3 times a week, just like I always have year round, and these boys are going to hit 2 buckets of baseballs. We're going to see where this leads us. My prediction to you is that it leads us to somewhere where you will get to see my sons play one day. We shall see. But if nothing else, I'm going to teach them what persistence will get you. Okay, now I've got a lot of interesting things in this video. We're going to go in a few different directions in this video, so let's get this thing going. The first thing I've got here is from XRP Big Time. And he sends me, if I can get this pulled up, from Stuart Alderati. Now, Stuart Alderati is an interesting figure. As you know, if you've listened to this channel, Stuart Alderati worked for CIT Bank, which was run by our Treasury Secretary, Steve Mnuchin, right? Current Treasury Secretary of the United States. Steve Mnuchin leaves, goes to the Treasury. Mysteriously, Stuart Alderati becomes the general counsel for this little startup in San Francisco called Ripple. All right, well, Stuart Alderati tweeted this out yesterday. He's an interesting figure, and every once in a while I go and I check in to see what he's up to, because he's not someone that you hear a lot out of. And by the way, I did see him in the hallway when I was at Ripple, and to be honest, there are certain guys, when I went to Swell, there were certain guys that were with Ripple that seemed to have a little more of an air about them, a little more intimidating than others, and I felt like he was one of the guys that was a little more intimidating. Brad Garlinghouse was not at all intimidating. I think Brad Garlinghouse is a very personable guy. He's the type of guy that you'd want to go have a beer with, I imagine, because he was not in any way intimidating. He was very, and not because he's not a sharp guy, just because that's the personality you would want in your chief salesman, CEO. But Stuart Alderati was a little, he had an air about him. He didn't seem like a guy I was going to walk right up to and start talking to. But anyway, Stuart Alderati tweeted this out yesterday. Thank you, Chairman Heath. Now, this is Heath Tarbert that we've been talking about the last couple of days. Thank you, Chairman Heath, for recognizing that digital assets and blockchain can solve real-world problems for people with sensible regulation. We can keep responsible innovation and legitimate use cases in the U.S. And he's tweeting this out. And the first thing, before I leave this, the first thing I want to point out is what I said, what I always say, which is all these guys know, all of these guys are in the same club. They all come from the same place. They all know each other. They're in pictures together. It's all the same thing, folks. But he's tweeting this tweet out from Heath Tarbert. Heath Tarbert says, thank you, Digital Chamber, for a great discussion. Now remember, the Digital Chamber of Commerce is run by that girl. I'm drawing a blank on her name, but she's the girl that was at the Bretton Woods 75th anniversary, and she was at the podium that I showed you, and she was talking about a new world global reserve currency, and she was basically in a debate with other people, and her side was that it should be a digital asset that's a new global reserve currency. So that's the same girl from the Digital Chamber of Commerce. He says, thank you for a great discussion on the CFT's FinTech agenda, the exciting potential of digital assets, and how the agency is tackling the current event. And he's tweeting out this tweet. Hey, y'all, I'm listening on Digital Chamber webinar with CFTC Chairman Heath. So he did a whole webinar apparently yesterday, and there's several quotes in here. I think it's a real opportunity for blockchain space to think about the tech that underlies the derivatives market. He has all kinds of quotes here, and I just wanted to show you that he's all over it. Well, then there is, let me see if this is where I wanted to go. So I was looking around for Heath Tarbert quotes as a result of this. And before I get back to Stuart Alderoty, I wanted to go over this. And that is this tweet right here. Heath Tarbert, he says, enjoy, and this is just a random tweet from October 2019 that I saw when I was looking around. Enjoyed discussing the rapid technological transformation taking place in our derivatives markets at today's Technology Advisory Committee meeting. CFTC, let's see who this is. Brian Quintins, a CFTC commissioner, has done a great job engaging with stakeholders on these highly technical issues. My remarks. And what caught my attention in this tweet was Technology Advisory Committee. I had not heard of that. So the CFTC has a Technology Advisory Committee. So I decided I would go look for that Technology Advisory Committee and see who's on it. And remember, and here, we'll just go through it. I'll show you'll see all the names that jump out. First, Credit Suisse has someone on it. Head of Client Platform for Prime Derivative Services. Goldman Sachs has someone on it. ErisX has someone on it. R3 has the managing director of R3. The CME Group, which was one of the first investors in Ripple, is on this. Eventus Systems, NASDAQ is on it. ICE is on it. ICE, which owns Bakkt. Bloomberg is on it. Let's see if there's anybody else interested. DTCC is on this board. There we have BlackRock, global head of trading of BlackRock. So and then FINRA's on it. So you see a lot of these names that we've been talking about for quite a while, and they're all on this committee. I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Now, I decided, since Stuart Alderoty had come up in my gathering of information this morning, what's fun to do, for those of you that don't ever do it, what is fun to do every once in a while is to go to Google and type in any subject, whether it's Ripple or a person at Ripple or XRP or this or that. And then after that, type in the letters PDF to see if there's any PDF documents out there that have someone in them. This is usually leads you down a very interesting pathway. Well, I did that with Stuart Alderoty today just to see if there was anything. Now, I don't know if this has ever been found by anybody, but it led me down an interesting path, and I'm going to take you down the path. So here we go. A search of Stuart Alderoty space PDF turned up this. And what this is a document from U.S. House of Representatives Committee on Ethics. And what this is, it says this form is disclosing the receipt of travel expenses for private sources for travel taken in connection with official duties. So in other words, this is a form that people in Congress have to fill out if they or people that work for them are going to travel or incur any expenses. So ethically, they have to report all these expenses. It's a government thing. Okay. So this is a form where Landon Zinda is turning in because this person is going to travel to Aspen. And and here's all the expenses, Aspen, Colorado. And then it says here, sponsor, who paid for the trip? Technology Policy Institute. All right. So as we go along, we find out who Landon Zinda is. He's apparently his employer, Tom, he must work for Tom Emmer. I think it's down here at the bottom where it says he works for Tom Emmer, who I think is on the Finance Committee of of Congress. But if you go down here, I want to say here's the letter to Landon Zinda, where they're basically saying, okay, you can go, more or less. Okay, and here it is, Landon Zinda, legislative director for U.S. Representative Tom Emmer, and he's going to some organization, some event in Aspen. Well, here it is. Technology Policy Institute. All right. And it says Aspen Forum 2019. Okay. The internet at a crossroads. All right. So before I went into this letter, and I'm going to go through this with you and let you see what this is. Now, I don't have any idea if someone's already found this on Twitter. If they did, I haven't seen it. Okay. So this Aspen Forum 2019, I just typed that into Google. And the first thing that came up led me to what I thought was what this is, and it's not. But I wanted to show you this anyway. Apparently, Aspen is a place where a lot of very powerful people go to have these different meetings that have impacts on the world economy and the world in general. This one was really creepy because at first I thought this was the forum that this guy was going to, but it's not. But even though I found something interesting, Aspen Security Forum, this came up and I was looking around here. And when you look through this, it's got some major powerful people that go to this. I clicked on the speakers and moderators because I thought this was the forum we were talking about. Well, this is from 2019, so I clicked on 2019, and look who pops up. Anna Manuel, someone who is on the Ripple board of directors. And there's Adam Schiff from Congress. But if you go through this, there are some major powerful people that are on this. And if you click at the about button on this each summer, the key national security and foreign policy issues are explored in detail during these 3 days of in-depth discussions. That's all I'm going to do as far as touching on this. Don't really want to touch on that. But back to this. This is the Technology Policy Institute, and maybe it's like a subset of that event, Aspen Forum 2019. So what I want to show you is the people that are there with Stuart Alderati at this Aspen this Technology Policy Institute and what they're talking about. Here's your opening reception. Phil Weiser, the Attorney General of the state of Colorado. Susan Athey is there, who is also on Ripple's board. And then let's see, you have a lot of academics that you see through here. Let's see, when one jumps out at me, I'm gonna like Richard Hayes, Deputy Chief Economist, United Kingdom Office of National Statistics. Leonard Nakamura, he's an economist at the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia. Let's see who else you have here as we go through. A lot of these are academics, but you'll see there's Hal Varian, the chief economist for Google. And then as we go along, Federal Trade Commission, here's someone from two people from the Federal Trade Commission. And then you've got another one and the Deputy General Counsel. So all these people are from the Federal Trade Commission. There's someone from Strategic Alliances from Verizon Communications. Let's see, there's another academic as we go. My phone, my watch, I'm sorry. Okay, and then there's Stuart Alderati, who's the general counsel for Ripple. And he speaks here too. It's a fireside chat, law and regulation of cryptocurrency. And then this is a dinner or something. Federal Trade Commission. And then we go down here at the Internet and Television Association. Public policy from Amazon. And then let's see if there's anybody else interesting. There's the chief economist from Google again. And then as we go down, let's see here. Oh, there's someone. Now, for those of you who have wondered if these guys that are on CNBC know all about Ripple and probably own XRP, your answer is right here. Here's Brian Sullivan that you see on CNBC every day, anchor and senior national correspondent for CNBC. He's there too. And then you've got this guy, Assistant Attorney General for the Antitrust Division for the United States Department of Justice. How many times have I told you on this channel that this idea that Bitcoin maximalists hang on to, this idea that Ripple owns all of most of XRP, and therefore Ripple can't be trusted because they're just trying to enrich themselves. I've made the point on this channel many times before. Take a look, just go to YouTube and type in antitrust and see what happens to anyone who has ever come anywhere close to having a monopoly in the United States. And if you think that the United States just type in antitrust. Look what happened to Microsoft. Look what happened to Howard Hughes. Just go back and look through history. Anyone who has ever told you or tried to sell you on the idea that Ripple is going to be able to hold all this XRP and that they are going to more or less become wealthier than most countries, including the United States, by having this XRP that runs up in price, and they just hoard all of it to make themselves wealthy. That is a stupid, ridiculous concept. And if you think the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, the Assistant Attorney General for Antitrust is going to sit in the same room with Ripple's General Counsel, and this wouldn't be something on people's minds, come on. I got an igloo in Georgia that I still have for sale for those of you that are buying that. Now, let's keep going down and see who else was there. The German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. All right, they're there. Let's see who else. I'm just looking for the ones that jump out. Carnegie Mellon University. Let's see, UNC. You remember, this is someone for University of North Carolina. As I recall, there is a node on the Ripple network that's being run out of UNC, just as a interesting thing. Now, I want to make sure I didn't miss any, because it seems like at the beginning of this list, there were some that I had seen before I started this video that are worthy of, no, United, I went over that. Let me see if there was anybody in here that I missed before I move on. But I just wanted to show you all of the major people from all over the world that were here. I swear I saw someone that was major out of Europe, and I may have covered them. But anyway, I think you've seen plenty there. You can do the Google yourself and go Stuart Alderati PDF and find it yourself. Well, let's go now and look at the actual Technology Policy Institute website, and here it is. This is the 2019 Aspen Forum, as I just showed you. And if you go down here, it says here, why attend? Discuss policy with people who make it. Sit at the table to debate the topics you care about and influence the world of technology in a beautiful and relaxed atmosphere. Work with thought leaders to build a new policy frameworks for studying and encouraging global innovation. And here are the 2019 speakers, and there is Stuart Alderati, and there is Susan Athey. And down here, the guy who that document was about, Landon Zenda, is the guy that works for Representative Tom Emmer, and all of these guys you'll see throughout here. Like there's the guy from CNBC we just mentioned. Here's all the people that were there. All right. So now you know. All right, let's go on. Michelle Vandenberg sent me this. There's a lot of interesting things in the news. This is from Digital Assets Daily. Listen to this.
Be all set to go. We're going to have a rocket upward. I want to thank David Solomon, CEO of Goldman Sachs, Brian Moynihan, CEO of Bank of America, Gordon Smith, co-president, COO of JP Morgan Chase, Charles Scharf, CEO of Wells Fargo, Michael Corbett, CEO of Citigroup, Al Kelly, CEO of Visa, Michael Miebach, CEO of MasterCard, Noah Wilcox, CEO, Chairman of Grand Rapids State Bank, and we had numerous others also on the call, and I just appreciate them. We're way ahead of schedule, by the way.
All right, thought that was an interesting cast of characters he brought up. Then there's this from Sven Henrich, the state of the consumer. Now, folks, I don't know if I've said this on this channel yet, but I was watching Laura Ingraham on Fox News last night, and something is beginning to happen that I think is going to happen with the current events going on. I think that you're about to see a lot of anger, and I think this is a good example. It says nearly a third of U.S. apartment renters didn't pay in April. I believe that regardless of how you feel about what's going on with the current events, I believe that not just people, but the people in the media are about to get very angry because it doesn't really sync up with them that you've shut down the entire economy of the world. It doesn't shutting down the entire economy to a lot of people is starting to seem like that does not match up to the numbers that they're seeing out of the current events. That's what I'm starting to notice right now. So I was going to mention that for what it's worth. You're about to see a lot of anger, and it might be from a lot of conservative media people who are normally pro-Trump if this thing does not get put to bed soon. That's my gut and what I'm seeing right now. Now, this is from XRP Bart. And he sent me this. Remember, Corey Johnson used to be the spokesperson for Ripple, and he's obviously still pro XRP. This is fascinating. To me, it emphasizes the critical importance of more innovation on the XRP platform. And he's tweeting this out. How could blockchain make our supply chains more resilient? World Economic Forum report speaks to how next-gen digital infrastructure can make a difference. And this is about supply chains. I'm not going to go into it, but it's important that these guys know. Corey Johnson knows what's going on. Okay. Also, there's a few economic things I wanted to show you. The Spectator Index tweeted out a couple of things. The first one is Japan. Goldman Sachs estimates country's economy may shrink by 25% this quarter amid state of emergency. 25%, folks. As I keep telling you, this is not going to be some recession. We're talking about global, worldwide mega depression if they do not let people go back to work soon. And it's probably going to happen anyway at this point. And then there's this. Breaking. France's economy shrunk by 6% in the first quarter of 2020, according to the Bank of France. I mean, really? 6%? And then there's this. Iran's President Rouhani calls on IMF to provide his country with $5 billion loan. This is chaos in the makings, folks, and it's everywhere you look. And then JP Morgan, this is from X-Men XRP, JP Morgan Chase CEO expects bad recession and a financial strain akin to 2008. You think? Jamie, I could have told you that 10 years ago that this was coming. I mean, really? And these guys are all, as usual, none of them are going to take the blame for the situation we're in. They're going to be able to point to the current events and say, oh, we couldn't have done anything about this. And they know that they've been benefiting from all the money printing and interest rates at nothing for all these years. They've put us into this corner. But the central bankers that put us in the corner, just like I showed you Janet Yellen yesterday, they're going to come out and they're going to be the people that are giving the advice to everyone when they've never correctly called a recession in their entire lives. They've created them. Okay, now now we're going off on a different tangent here, folks. I was looking around at different things and I was trying to look for something, and I bumped into one of these older Medium articles that I wanted to show you. Fintech firms form Securing America's Internet of Value Coalition to further blockchain technology. Now, take note, this Medium article was written by Global ID, okay, and we'll go there in a second. 5 leading San Francisco-based fintech firms, including Ripple, RippleWorks, Coil, PolySign, and Hard Yaka, have formed a coalition retaining lobbying firm Klein Johnson, Okay, so I wanted to go through each of these organizations and who are these different organizations and who's involved with them. And I just kind of went down this path to see where it would lead me. Okay. And now I'm going to go down this path with you. There's something that stuck out with me though, right? So, it goes on, and then here's a quote from Chris Larson. It says, the Internet of Value will have the same dramatic economic and social benefits as IP did for data and shipping container did for goods. America has the opportunity to lead this global transformation, and it starts with our policymakers. As these new technologies grow, blockchain and digital asset protocols consistent with America's long-term interests should be treated equally to those dominated by foreign jurisdictions. But here's what caught my attention is it says Chris Larsen, Ripple co-founder and executive chairman Global ID Advisor. Well, this is something I don't think I knew. So I decided to go look around. All right. So first we're going to look at who was involved in that Medium article. Who are the guys that are a part of that organization? And of course, the first one we want to talk about is PolySign. And you know we have to whisper that because PolySign is the most secretive project in digital assets. We're not allowed to. I don't know that we're even allowed to talk about it. So I always whisper like this. And I say PolySign because we don't know who's listening. So, but we do know. Here's what we do know. They have been willing to tell the world this. PolySign's custody solution supports the full spectrum of digital assets and is designed to scale to the trillions under management, just like State Street scales to the trillions for traditional custody. Okay. All right. So we know that PolySign is one of the companies that was involved in that lobbying group. Here's the next one. RippleWorks was on that list. Now, what is RippleWorks? Catalytic capital to scale ambitious social ventures. RippleWorks invests in high-growth social ventures to help scale their impact and improve more lives. Who we fund social ventures with proven social impact ventures, past product market fit, and actively scaling, strong CEOs and management teams. And here's some of their grants, debt, equity, and here's some of the projects that they have funded. And if you go to the Who We Are, you'll see that Chris Larsen is a part. He's one of the co-founders of this. Well, as you know, anytime you're a Chris Larsen level guy, you're going to go the route of and do things like he probably models what he's doing after Bill and Melinda Gates, and he's trying to give back and do some good as he goes forward. He seems to be doing a lot of charity type things. Now, the other firm that was mentioned in that article that I showed you is a company called Hard Yaka. All right, Hard plus Yaka. We invest in insights that empower individuals and better society. All right. Now, Hard Yaka, this is basically Greg Kidd's, and you'll remember Greg Kidd. He's one of the first 10 people at Ripple. He's also a venture capitalist, and this is his venture capital firm. And if you go down, you'll see that it's invested in Ripple. And let's see if the cryptocurrencies they're invested in are Ethereum, Bitcoin, and XRP. And as you go down, anyway, you'll see if you look up here at the team, you'll see that this is Greg Kidd. All right. So Greg Kidd is the guy, and we'll get back to Greg Kidd in a minute. All right. But first, I wanted to look at the other company, and the one that actually wrote the article I just showed you. And this is also Greg Kidd's project. It's called Global ID. This looks very interesting. And this is where Chris Larsen is also an advisor. And this is where I'm going to take you with the rest of this video. Take back control of your data. Register your unique Global ID name today. Privately and securely identify yourself to sites and apps. And this is they show you kind of how this works. Verify once, gain trust, reuse anywhere. Verify yourself without having to share private details. Prove you are over 21 without sharing your ID. Confirm your college degree without sharing it. And then it goes with your identity. You can access a digital wallet, find a roommate, rent a home, adopt a puppy, qualify for rewards, hire a nanny. A service you're interested in requires verification. Uphold, this is an example. Uphold is requesting 5 verifications. They want to verify that you have a college degree, that you're over 18, valid driver's license, phone number, social security number. This is where the world's going, folks. And this is fascinating. Interact with people you know and trust. Enjoy secure and verified messaging without sharing your phone number. Private, secure messaging. Connect with other Global ID names, verified and trustworthy. And then here's Greg Kidd. He says, every person has a right and a responsibility to a secure, trusted, and private identity. All right. So I went to the About Us on this, and I wanted to see who else was involved in this. All right. As we scroll down, let's see, where was the, let me see here, meet the team is what it was. All right. If we meet the team, we won't go through all these people. They work there. And then as we go down, these are our board of directors. Not interested in that. Our advisors is what I was interested in. Let's start with this lady here, Diane Adachi. All right. This was my first stopping point, Diane Adachi. And so I was scrolling down here and wanted to see what she was about. Yaka Labs. So she's obviously worked hard. Yaka, she's an advisor. She's a member there. Let's see what else she's done. She was with a global blockchain lead at Accenture Digital from January 2013 to January 2018. Now remember, Accenture is an investor in Ripple. They were an early investor in Ripple. And she was obviously there when they invested in Ripple, and she was the head of she was their global blockchain lead. And now she's on a board with Chris Larson and with Greg Kidd. Wonder if she knows anything. In fact, I didn't even look at this when I was earlier. Let's see what it says about her time at Accenture Digital. With my background as an entrepreneur, it says, here's what she did. Recognized as Payment Source's most influential women in payments 2017, she co-authored this, How Banks Are Working to Build the Foundation of the World's First Real-Time Global Payment Network. Co-authored Business Case Assessment, Distributed Ledger Technology for Cross-Border Payments. Currently, Global Blockchain offers lead for cross-industries, headed an industry assessment on digital currencies, analytics, loyalty, mobile payments, and wallets. Does my son need to draw you all a picture, folks? I mean, this becomes so obvious when you really start looking through all this. Now, let's go and look at someone else here. Who was the next person I looked at? I'm just gonna have to pull it up and see who the next one I looked at was. Okay, here we go. All right, the next one I looked at is this lady right here. Her name is Karen Gifford. And look, right beside her is Chris Larson, who we don't have to mention. We know all about Chris Larson. Now, Karen Gifford, the second I saw her in this list of people, she was immediately familiar because she, in the early days of Ripple, you would see there's a lot of pictures you can find around, but she looked like she was almost like Chris Larson's right-hand woman, okay? And she was in charge of global regulatory something or other. And just so you know, this is her. This is the picture I remembered, so I went and found it. This is from Stewart XRP. Prime Minister Xavier Bettel of Luxembourg left with Chris Larson, Ripple co-founder and CEO, and Karen Gifford, special advisor for global regulatory affairs for Ripple. So, and we've documented here, Ripple's met with Luxembourg's financial people in Luxembourg. They've been to Ripple's offices. You remember the picture of Brad Garlinghouse with the funny Luxembourg glasses on. Something's going on with Luxembourg, obviously, right? So let's look at Karen Gifford now. The first thing that jumps out at me on this page, first of all, it shows her as being retired. So she worked with Ripple for 4 years and 5 months. Now she's an advisor at One World Identity. Now I went and looked at their website. It didn't really lead me anywhere, but I think the name of the company itself kind of tells you all you need to know. The second thing where she pops up is right here. Council member, Global Future Council on Future of Blockchain, the World Economic Forum. There's the World Economic Forum again. And remember, anytime you see any of these global organizations, they're all the same thing. World Economic Forum, IMF, World Bank, you name it. All these organizations are intertwined. It's all the same thing. So she was a council member here at this thing. Let me see if there was anything else that I needed to mention about her. That's what I wanted to focus in on. Let me make sure. Okay, that's the tweet. Now, so I went and found the global, they call them, there's not one, she's a council member, they call them global councils. She was on the Global Future Council on the Future of Blockchain, and I think they rename these things every once in a while. But the Global Future Councils, there's several of them, and here's the video that they have on their website about these.
The world in the 21st century faces so many problems which are complicated.
I expect the digital transformation of life to bring huge changes, from science to healthcare to sensors to robotics.
Globalization means that the issues are interdependent with each other across borders. So it's a huge enterprise to deal with that. How do you bring together and bring forward new ideas that have both the depth to deal with the technical issues and the breadth to deal with all the linkages across the world?
The World Economic Forum brings us together, gives us the space to think over issues that are tremendously complicated with experts in other areas.
Everybody is a leader in their own field. We actually learn a lot from them.
We have members from practitioners, regulators, academia, central banks that can really work in an unconstrained environment together.
This is unique. There is no other gathering like this for bringing different perspectives together.
It's a wonderful opportunity to cross-pollinate ideas and come together to look at where we want to go as a society.
And we develop a vision, how could the world look like, and then we derive some other different scenarios so that we can derive some call for actions.
When we come together as a summit, we can grab experts from other parts of the world, from other groups, and really get a better sense of the issue. They're an incubator for all of these different ideas and solutions that global leaders discuss at Davos.
The most interesting conversations are at the intersection of our work.
The trade and investment crowd meets with the crowd on food security, on technology, on artificial intelligence. And the sum of all of this is what will allow us to then come up with solutions that respond to the integrated challenge we're facing today.
We want to use the World Economic Forum as a real platform to influence the system.
And out of this, partnerships are really starting to build up.
As technology becomes more pervasive, the more scalable the solutions that we build can be.
We can understand the change that's happening. We can shape it to reach the ultimate goal, which is everyone on this planet living in dignity, able to pursue their potential within the boundaries of the natural resources that we have available. That's a big goal. It's very exciting, takes a lot of work, but I think we can get there.
So there you go. And so what I wanted to show you about Karen, it is Karen, isn't it? Yeah, Karen Gifford. This is the organization she was on, and I keep forgetting what it's called. Council Member Global Future Council on Future of Blockchain. I want you to see some of the people, and here's their objective, by the way. Explore how the blockchain can impact industry, governments, and society in the future, and design innovative governance models that ensure their benefits are maximized and the associated risks are mitigated. I want to make a point here before I show you who's on this organization with her, or who was. This is back from 2018. So you got Stuart Alderati, who's working on on policy in the United States in Aspen. And then you've got people that are doing it on a global scale at the same time, folks. None of this is by coincidence. This is a highly coordinated, very genius plan that Ripple's been working for a long time. Now let's look at some of these people that were on this with her. The Bitfury group, this guy, and then you got Thomson Reuters. Here's someone from Hyperledger. Here's someone from R3, and then here's someone from the Digital Currency Group. Then you've got her, Catherine Gifford from Ripple. Then you got someone from Everledger. Let's keep going and see it. There's someone that's the director and professor from this. This is the Republic of China, okay, and then we have. As we go down, there's someone from Chain Inc. And then as we go, here's another person from the People's Republic of China, MIT. Let's go back up here and see if there's someone from MasterCard, Deutsche Bank AG out of London, founder of BitPesa in Luxembourg. This is someone from the Assistant Director, Office of Financial Stability Policy and Research, Federal Reserve System in the United States. Let me see if the Bank of England, FinTech, the head of the FinTech Accelerator for the Bank of England, United Kingdom. Let's see who else. Barclays Bank representative from corporate banking. Center for Cryptocurrency Research and Engineering from United Kingdom. Financial services industry community curator from the World Economic Forum. And then the blockchain project head, blockchain and distributed ledger technology, World Economic Forum. Again, is it time for my son to draw you all another picture? All right. Okay. Now then, who else do we have with this global ID? The next person that I would like to focus in on is this guy, Michael Barr, because I've talked about him before on this channel. Just turns out that this guy used to be a Treasury official. How many ties to the U.S. Treasury Department do we have to go into on this channel? Previously, he served Assistant Secretary for Financial Institution of the U.S. Treasury Department, where he helped develop and pass Dodd-Frank, which was the legislation that was the response to the financial crisis. Then, as we go down, let me see, I think there was something else. I wanted to read these last two things. This guy also, he's a non-resident scholar at the Brookings Institution and serves as an advisor to the Clinton Global Initiative. He has served as a visiting professor at University of Pennsylvania. And also, there's this right here. Let's see. Brookings Institute Center for American Progress, the Fdic Advisory Committee on Economic Inclusion, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, which Ripple works with, per Chris Larson. All right, and now let's go to, I think I got one more person I wanted to show you, and that is this guy, Jean-Louis Schiltz. Jean-Louis Schiltz. I think maybe I'm saying that right, maybe not. Who is this guy? He's a senior partner at Schiltz & Schiltz. He's an honorary professor at University of Luxembourg. There's that Luxembourg. This is the most interesting part about this guy. From 2004 to 2009, Jean-Louis served as cabinet minister in Luxembourg. His portfolio included media, telecommunications, technology, international development, and defense. So this guy was a cabinet minister in Luxembourg. And every time I hear Luxembourg, it reminds me of two things. First, that we've seen people from the finance ministry in Luxembourg at Ripple more than once. And the second is that we've seen a picture of Chris Larson in Luxembourg with the finance minister at the time. There's a picture on Twitter that I've shown before about that. There's another thing that Luxembourg always reminds me of. If you remember that financial form that was going around a long time ago from the Edmund de Rothschild fund that showed that Edmund de Rothschild owned a lot of SBI holdings, and it showed how much XRP SBI owned. And that, if you look on the front page of that document, it says that Edmund de Rothschild, the fund, is out of Luxembourg. That's what I'm always reminded of. Okay, now now we're going to get back to Greg Kidd. We've talked about Greg Kidd over the last few months, and this is my favorite clip from Greg Kidd.
You kind of take that for granted. That's the way Airbnb got started, and Uber. They weren't in, at that time, regulated industries. But generally, things in financial services, you got to be regulated. So when I came to Ripple, that was a new blockchain. That was the second thing after Bitcoin. The first month, we went to Treasury to explain what we were doing. So we didn't operate under the illusion that we would never be regulated and we would never have to ask permission. So it's finding that balance between doing something that's really innovative, but if you want to go mainstream and you're successful, you're going to run up against rules and regulations, guys with guns and badges.
Okay, so that's the clip I wanted you to hear. Now, when I heard him, and I've talked to people behind the scenes about it, not behind the scenes at Ripple. I mean, I've talked to people that I know on YouTube and Twitter, behind the scenes, people I bounce things off of. And I always said, well, he said we went straight to the Treasury, and he said it as if that's just something you can do. You just go straight to the Treasury, and they're going to have you in, and Treasury Secretary is just going to meet with you. That's the way he says this, and that always struck me. I was like, well, that doesn't add up. How did this guy have such direct access to the Treasury? Well, when I was putting this video together, I was looking for other videos on Greg Kidd, and I don't know if the video I'm about to show you has ever been seen. Somebody has probably shown parts of it or something, but I haven't seen it until today. Now, so I was looking around, and I found a video of Greg Kidd where he said something that I did not know. Maybe some of you knew, but I did not know this. because this struck me that this guy has had access. Well, oh, yeah, we just went up to the Fed, the Treasury Secretary, the Treasury, and met with them to let them know what we were doing. And it goes in conjunction with this video as well, which I want to show you before I show you the video. And that is this one that I've also shown. This is the clip where the Federal Reserve Chairman Powell tells us that the Fed has been working on digital currencies for 20 years.
What if a private sector entity, a large company with a large network of users has a digital currency? So we're looking.
That's already popped out, and I think we had pretty bipartisan concerns on that one.
So that's why we're doing all this work. We understand I would say Libra was something of lit a bit of a fire. This is something we've been focused on digital currencies for a couple decades. What if a
couple of decades they've been focused on digital currencies? Okay, so that came out of nowhere. All right, so now against that backdrop, I wanted to play you a couple of clips from this video from Greg Kidd that I found interesting. The first one is a shorter clip, but it kind of helps you understand how would Greg Kidd have access, okay? And he answers the question right here. I did not know this. Maybe some of you did, but this is interesting.
Any private information, unless there was a need backed by due process of law in any particular legal jurisdiction that applies around the world.
And how far are we from that happening? So how far are we from this portable identity?
Well, I worked at the Fed and then at a group called Promontory, and we did a lot of the work on some of the biggest money laundering and terrorist financing schemes in the world. My first job for that company was like tracking down the money laundering for Pinochet and whatnot. The current systems, in terms of their effectiveness for money laundering, their protection of privacy, we've seen what's happened with Facebook on the privacy front. So this concept of trusting Equifax or Facebook or big authorities with large honeypots of data, that hasn't worked out so well. And as far as the BSA AML regimes that are the current regulatory standard for the world, you really only catch with those the dumbest bad guys, right? It's really, really easy to beat those systems unless you're very clumsy and careless. And so if your standard is actually something that works, something that actually protects privacy and also creates security, the concept of trusting authorities that are running huge silos with honeypots of data is terrible for protecting privacy. It's also terrible for catching bad guys. So if we move toward an evidence base of what actually works, I don't understand how the...
Okay, there's a couple of things to unpack out of that. The first is he says he worked for the Fed. Okay, he worked for the Fed before he ever went to Ripple. The second thing he says in there that's very important that you know as we go forward with this technology, both you and I, those of us in the United States, it has never made any sense that these 2 or 3 organizations maintain our credit. You've got Equifax and what are the other organizations? There's 2 or 3 different credit agencies. This idea that all of your information is stored, and then I think Equifax was hacked at some point, but this idea that those things are centralized in what he called silos, that's one of the things, and that's why your identity, your information is going to be like on a distributed network. That's where all this is going, so that nobody can they would have to get access. They would have to go through the blockchain. That's where he's going with all this. So this is where what he's talking about. But the main thing I wanted you to get out of that is that he said he worked for the Fed. So I went to his LinkedIn and I missed this somehow. Maybe all of you knew, but I did not know. So he's the co-founder of Hard Yaka, the Global ID, and then Chief Risk Officer at Ripple Labs. But before he gets to Ripple, okay, he's at 2004 to 2013. He's at this consultancy group. But before that, he's with the Federal Reserve Board. He's a senior analyst from 2002 to 2004. So and look what he did, senior analyst in payment systems, focus on check and ACH clearing systems, as well as private sector money transfer systems. Now, when I see this right here, do you know what Do you know what this reminds me of? You may remember I had a guy from a fintech company on my show the other day. We originally saw these two guys that founded this company. They were on Bitcoin Ben's show, and they made a comment that they were at a bank regulatory seminar, and that one of the regulators who would know said that Ripple was about to replace the ACH system and transfers. Okay. That guy, he had literally, he took notes while he was at the seminar, and he brought his notes onto my show and actually read the notes word for word. And that's what he said the regulator said. That's what the first thing I thought of when I read this. So here you've got a guy that was with the Federal Reserve Board, who was the first 10 employees at Ripple. And then I'm going to play you this last clip. Just, it doesn't have to do with that, but it's another clip where he talks about Ripple a bit and gives you a little bit of history that you may not have known.
Makes you answer the wrong question. And so, you know, if I have one piece of advice, it's like, don't worry about getting the right answer. Just make sure you're asking the right question. And then you might build something that's going to be interesting. Even if you get it wrong the first couple of times, you're working on the right question.
Yeah, interesting. And since you mentioned Twitter, I think it's we're all curious to know, what's your path has been? You got to global ID right now. We know Anna mentioned you had Twitter and you had Ripple and on a way in other companies in between. Can you tell us how I think it would even show like maybe how your thinking goes. You started here and now you're here. What was in between?
Well, it's kind of like a Forrest Gump experience. You just kind of stumble into one thing. I mean, Jack Dorsey hacked into one of my early companies, and I hired him sight unseen, and I never really understood what he was saying, but I always realized you should probably keep an extra bottle of milk in the refrigerator, because I had a sense that that guy was going to nail it, right? The same thing with Twitter and Square were both pre-Satoshi in 2008, and Bitcoin was an amazing system, not to me so much technologically, although obviously it's a technological innovation. The great thing about Bitcoin to me was in a sector where I had been a regulator, you always had to ask permission to innovate in fintech and regtech. But with blockchain, look, it's not very efficient. It's slow, okay? It's not compliant. It doesn't have like cross liquidity, but it was an innovation where you did not have to ask permission in a sector where everybody always had to ask permission. And so the companies that came along, Bitcoin wasn't a company, so one of the first ones I could get involved with was Ripple. And Ripple was like another ledger, but it had two extra columns. One for currency, so instead of it just being one currency, it could be any currency, and two for the issuer. Who did you trust behind that currency? Now, the only problem was when I showed up as I think about the 10th person as the chief risk officer, I was like, looked at this ledger, and there were all these balances, and I well, I want to go back to the first ledger, the Adam and Eve event, from 1 to 2 to 3 to... He said, well, we lost the first 40,000 ledgers, so we already had 188 users before we could keep track. And as a chief risk officer and someone with a compliance background, losing the first 40,000 ledgers and then finding that all identities henceforth were only an email address, that made me know I was not going to have a great meeting the first time I went to Washington, D.C. to meet with figures from Treasury to explain what this distributed ledger thing was all about. So distributed ledgers without identity, that's like, wow, we've got a blockchain for diamonds, and we've got one for like houses and cars and fine art. I'm like, that's all great, but if you don't know who's signing for the private keys, while that's a technically elegant solution, we live in a world of law and regulation, and that's totally not compliant. So it's really cool, but like my chance to be at Ripple was a chance to figure out whether we could take these technologies and bring them to the mainstream, because that's the part that's really exciting. I saw somebody else who mentioned something about abundance rather than disruption. Well, it's hard to have abundance if you're focusing on the 1% of people rather than the 99%. And so taking a new technology like blockchain, combining it with the advances that we have in biometrics or the abilities of mobile phones and GPS, and creating a system that isn't Orwellian and isn't Mad Max and touches everyone. That's why it's a really exciting time to be on the planet right now. And I'm really, really excited to be here. I'm a little bit jet lagged because I just got off from working with the teams overseas. And it is amazing that the talent in this area, I wish I could say this is a talent area that's led by Silicon Valley. That's not what I'm seeing. This is a talent area that's led by people from all over the world. I just come here because the weather.
So I thought that was a very interesting, I think that when the history books are written, this guy will have been one of really the unknown geniuses behind the early days of Ripple. And I think that if he was not involved, this may not have ever happened. But I thought that was a piece of video I had never seen, and it was very interesting. Well, guess what? I'm the digital asset investor. I'm not an investment advisor. This is for entertainment purposes only. Please subscribe and hit the like button and tell your friends and family that Greg Kidd needs to go into the history books, because I believe that he is one of the key people that is responsible for this having gotten off the ground and gotten to where it is, because he worked at the Federal Reserve. Thank you for listening.